On today's episode of Living Proof, we have Louise. Louise, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely that I could just share.
So Louise, from a young age, your mum passed away, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Growing up, my mum was a single mum.
Yeah.
And my dad's not in the picture. When I was about 6 years old, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and unfortunately she lost the fight to that. It spread to the bone and all over the body. And so yeah, I was 7 years old when she passed.
So when she passed away, did you have a guardian? Who looked after you?
Mum had a really close friend, a childhood best friend, who they were inseparable. So she ended up looking after me and her two children as well. So I gained two sisters in that. It was hard because you're adopting into a different family who they've been their own family themselves, and then being an only child coming into the youngest child position isn't easy either. I guess in a sense it's really difficult because everything's been taken away from you, really, and yes, you're being loved and cared for, but it just can be really difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So you had your mum and you had your two sisters. Was there any other key people in your life?
My guardian's mum, I would go to her house on a Friday night and we would watch TV, do the fun grandmother and granddaughter stuff, which is typical. But it was the times of prayer at the end of the night when she'd tuck me into bed and would just funny conversations and just talk about life and talk about things. And always at the end of it, it would be, who loves you more than anything? And the answer clearly was, God does, but we'd go through this cycle of all different funny answers, like the dog does or the cat does and things like that. But you always had to end with, well, God does. It was just one of those things. She just, no other words about faith, no other words about anything, but just reminding me that God loves me.
Yeah, amazing. So you've experienced so much grief and loss as a child. I imagine that was a really difficult period, even probably up into your adolescence. I'm assuming it's probably affected you as an adult as well.
During my mid-20s, I found singleness was a real hard point for me, as a lot of my friends and family were getting married, having children of their own, and also being a part of bridal parties as well, which you want to be happy, but deep down you're also a little bit, oh, well, when's my day going to come? And also just wondering, okay, well, there were times when I'd go home and I'd cry to God and go, well, what's going on? When are you going to bring someone special into my life? Yeah. However, I guess you just got to use those times for good.
Yeah. Amazing. So what does life look like for you now?
Well, that's actually been really a good thing for me. Like, I've really looked at what I've gone through, like growing up with losing mum, having a new family look after me, and also just finding that really important on how I walk my walk, in not holding on to the bitterness, and whether you believe in God or not, that people are put in your life for a reason, and they can be blessings. They can be real blessings, and we are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus, and sometimes we will see Jesus in them. Maybe not at the time, maybe it will be later on in the time. It's really important for me, I guess, to be a spiritual mother. Yes, I still long to be a wife and to be a mother, but in that time, if I can look after someone's child once a week for an hour so that they can just have some me time, or if I can play with that child in church so they can listen.
So you mentioned the word bitterness before. I imagine that going through grief and loss, like for goodness sake, you were 7 years old, you've lost your mum, single mum, going into a brand new family. I imagine that even as an adult, it'd be so easy to fall into that trap of bitterness.
It is.
What is the key that helps you to stay out of that place?
I guess it's knowing that we can be a helping hand and a community in just wherever we walk. And there are people throughout my life that have been amazing. They were to my mum, they were to my guardian, they were to me.
Yeah.
Something when my mum was in the hospice at the time before she passed was one of the nurses showed me this like a spinning wheel, and it had all different emotions, and you're allowed to feel those emotions. It was, if you're sad one day, that's okay. If you're happy, great, that's awesome. Yeah. But I guess it's just knowing your feelings are real and knowing that you will work through them. And even in those times of sadness and those times of loss and grief, there is so much joy and there is so much love in that time. Yeah.
It really is time, isn't it? When with grief and loss, it is time and surrounding yourself with people that love you and can journey with you through that space. We all have an inspiring story that helps us get through difficult times. What's the story that helps you?
Well, during my singleness, it was really interesting because I'd be sitting in church or teaching Sunday school, and God would always drop the Sarah and Abraham story into me, probably more Abraham, obviously, on the you will father nations and all of that sort of stuff. And it was interesting because Sarah was longing to also be a mother and get pregnant and all of that sort of stuff. And I guess for me, it was later on when I came to realisation of, well, singleness might be my path that I have to go down. But he kept whispering to me, you will still mother nations, you will still make a big impact for the next generation or future generations. And I've had a great relationship with older generations because the church was up there. So there was a time when Mum was in the hospice and she was ringing my guardian at the time, her friend, and I was in the background laughing with my two future sisters and just giggling, laughing, playing. And Mum started to tear up because she's like, this is the one thing that's put me at peace, knowing that my daughter is going to be okay when I go. And it's really hard because I can only imagine how she felt, just wondering, is it going to carry hurt, bitterness and all of that sort of stuff along with the future. And I didn't know this story until about probably 4 or 5 years ago, so it was just, oh, okay. It's just nice to know that.
Just a precious little story for you.
It is. Yeah. It holds something deep for me, that it also gave my mum peace near the end of her time. Yeah. And yes, she was a Christian too, but it just, when you're going through cancer and you know the end isn't going to be great, it is death, unfortunately. That it is just something that just gave her a little bit of hope and peace as well. Yeah.
So what's your relationship like with your family now?
My biological family is great. As an adult, your relationship changes, it really does. And just recently I've been really blessed to have some adult conversations with my aunties and uncles about my mum, but my guardian and my grandma are still massive role models in my life, and I would be lost without them. I've had many challenges in my life and they've walked through those walks with me every single day. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Join us next time on Living Proof.